Gen Z Americans believes it takes a salary of $588,000 to be considered financially successful.
Right. Let's dive right in today. You ever think about what it actually means, like, to be truly financially successful?
Oh, yeah, all the time.
Well, today, that's what we're going to unpack. We've got some interesting research about how different generations view financial success. And I got to say, Gen Z, they're looking at things a little bit differently.
Yeah, I think that's a really good way to put it. Yeah, differently.
So to lay it all out there, our deep dive today is on what it means to be financially successful. And we're going to be looking specifically at this really cool Empower survey.
Yeah.
And I guess to just kick things off, what was your biggest takeaway from this Empower survey?
You know, honestly, the thing that really jumped out at me was how much more Gen Z thinks they need to be considered successful.
Yeah.
It's like they're playing in a different ballpark entirely, you know?
Totally. So they said, what was it, like $588,000 to be considered financially successful?
Yeah, $588,000. And, I mean, compare that to other generations like Gen X and millennials. They're thinking more like half that amount.
Yeah, it's more than double. It's wild. It makes you wonder, like, what are they seeing that maybe we're not?
Exactly.
It really does make you think. You know, the same survey also found that, like, the average American, you ask them, they think a salary of $270,000, that's when you've made it. But think about this. Even that puts you in the top 10% of earners in the entire country.
Wow.
Right. It kind of blows your mind a little bit. Like, $270,000 sounds like a lot of money, but when you realize how few people actually earn that much,
It really puts things in perspective.
it does. It does. So, all right, let's unpack this a little. What do you think is going on here? Why this huge difference between what Gen Z thinks and what everyone else thinks?
You know, it's tough to say for sure, but I think there are a few things at play here. You know, first off, there's this whole idea of feeling broke even when you're earning a good income.
Oh, tell me about it.
Right. Like, think about the cost of living these days. Everything's going up. Groceries, gas, rent. It feels like you need a small fortune just to keep your head above water.
Yeah, that's so real. And then on top of that, there's all this pressure to keep up with, like lifestyle trends, the latest tech, travel.
Right. And social media doesn't help.
It's like everyone's always on vacation or buying something new.
Exactly. So even if you're making what on paper looks like a decent salary, you might still feel like you're barely scraping by.
Totally. And I think that's something everyone can relate to. It's like no matter how much you make, there's always this feeling that you need just a little bit more.
Absolutely. And that's where I think Gen Z might be coming from, at least in part.
Okay, so you're saying they just feel like they need more to cover the basics and maybe a little extra for those, lifestyle things.
Right. But it's also more than that. I think they're also looking at the bigger picture. Like, they're thinking about things like buying a house, starting a family, maybe even retiring early.
Yeah, all those big milestones.
Exactly.
Mm,
And all of those things require serious cash.
they do, especially these days.
Especially these days. So I think for Gen Z, it's not just about having money to spend. It's about having money to build a stable and secure future.
That makes a lot of sense. And, it's something we don't always talk about, but it's so important. I mean, how can you really feel successful if you're constantly stressed about money?
Exactly.
So maybe part of it is that Gen Z is just being, like, more realistic, more pragmatic.
Right.
They're factoring in all these potential costs, and they're setting the bar higher because they know it's going to be tough.
Exactly. And they've seen what's happened to older generations. Like, they've witnessed the struggles with debt, the housing crisis. They don't want to repeat those mistakes.
Oh, true.
You know, speaking of that $270,000 figure we talked about earlier, the report actually pointed to some specific jobs that typically command that kind of salary. Like, they mentioned plastic surgeons and dermatologists as examples.
Real interesting.
But here's the thing. Those jobs, they usually require years of specialized training, and they often come with a mountain of student loan debt.
That's a really good point. It's not just about the income. It's about the path you have to take to get there.
Right. And that path isn't easy, and it definitely isn't cheap.
So you're saying that even though these jobs might seem like the ticket to financial success, there's a whole other side to the story.
Absolutely. And it highlights the fact that these high-paying jobs, they're not accessible to everyone.
Yeah.
And even for those who can get there, there are still challenges and trade-offs.
And it's definitely a reminder that, what we see on the surface might not tell the whole story. I mean, we were talking about how 270,000 puts you in the top 10%, but even earning over 200,000 puts you in a pretty exclusive group.
It really does. Like, it's easy to get caught up in these big numbers, but it's important to remember that that's not the reality for most people.
Right, right. So, okay, we've talked about how Gen Z might be viewing things differently because of the current economic climate, the struggles they've seen, all of that. But do you think there's also a chance that maybe this is about more than just money?
Oh, absolutely. I think that's a really important question. Like, is this just about Gen Z being practical, or could it be a sign of a deeper shift in values?
Yeah. What are your thoughts on that?
Honestly, I think it could be a bit of both. On one hand, I think they're definitely being more pragmatic, more aware of the economic realities they face. But on the other hand, I also think there might be a shift in what they prioritize.
Okay, so like what are they prioritizing?
Well, maybe it's not just about accumulating wealth. Maybe it's about having more time for the things they care about, more flexibility, more control over their lives.
So like work-life balance, maybe pursuing passions.
Exactly. And I think that's something we're seeing across generations. But it seems especially strong with Gen Z. They're not necessarily willing to sacrifice their happiness and well-being for a bigger paycheck.
That's a really interesting point. And I think it kind of challenges the traditional definition of financial success. Like maybe it's not just about how much money you have, but about how you live your life.
I think you hit the nail on the head. It's not just about the number in your bank account. It's about what that number allows you to do, to be, to experience.
Exactly. So, all right, we've covered a lot of ground here. We've talked about the different ways generations are defining financial success, the challenges they're facing, the potential reasons behind these differences. It's a complex issue for sure. But maybe, at the end of the day, the real question isn't about hitting a specific income target.
That's what I keep coming back to as well. Like, what if instead of focusing on a number, we redefined financial success to encompass broader measures of well-being? What do you think?
I think that's a fantastic way to look at it. It's about creating a life that feels rich and meaningful, not just a bank account.
Exactly. Things like financial security, of course, but
Yeah.
also freedom to pursue your passions, time for loved ones, a sense of purpose.
Those are the things that really matter.
They are.
Well, I think that's a perfect place to wrap things up. So, as you go about your day, consider this. What does financial success truly mean to you? What kind of life do you want to build? It's a question worth pondering. And until next time, keep diving.
Keep diving.